annual meeting this year is Gathering Strength and Scattering Light. And when we look around our world and our culture right now, that's a pretty strange kind of concept. To be honest, much of the time we gather for security and we scatter in fear. We gather for security in numbers, in having good piles of money, assets that we can depend on, money for a rainy day, for when the storms happen, and if that's ever in jeopardy, if that ever gets threatened in any way, we scatter in fear. We see that happen in so many ways in our world and in our culture, on so many different levels. But that's not what the gospel calls us to do. The gospel call really is gathering strength and scattering light. At Maritime Conference, we really do gather strength, don't we? I mean, that's why we all love the annual meeting. That's why we come to Sackville every year. That's why when it comes up in the budget and we say, we could save a lot of money if we only did this every 2 years, every 3 years. Time and again, everyone says, no way, we have to do this. This is where the body of Christ for so many of us becomes so real and so present, and that passion is so immediate and with us all as we get together and we think about the directions that God is truly calling our church here in this part of the country, and indeed as Maritime Conference, calling the rest of the church to pay attention as well. It's an amazing time, and let's not forget that as we gather in Sackville for this year. Scattering light is a little different too, right? Especially in our churches when we think about those issues. If we scatter the light, who's going to be left to turn the lights on in the building? That's often the kind of conundrum we get into. The institution that shaped us and the foundational faith that is the rock beneath us that will not move. That's that ongoing tension. And Jesus reminds us, when we look at the Gospels, he didn't sit down and open a house and put a shingle out on the side of the road and say, hey, I'll take appointments on the Sabbath day starting at 11 o'clock. Jesus went out into the roads and lanes and fields. He went wherever the gospel called him, into the places that were hurting. And he shined the light of love and justice wherever he went. And we're called to do the same. So when we gather for the annual meeting this year, let's remember we're not coming because the manual tells us so. We're not coming because it's an appointment in our calendar. We're coming because we're called to gather strength and scatter light. So let's open the space to that of the annual meeting. Let's invite all the guests, all the delegates, everyone in the streets and lanes and fields who wants to participate in that conversation about what the future of our church is going to mean, about what really gives us passion and drive to live the gospel right now. Let's come ready to share those ideas with open hearts and with really daring minds. We've got to ask some interesting questions of one another, like, at this point in time, what really matters? When you get down to it, what really matters in the church, in our life of faith right now? What is God calling you to do, to change, or even to become? This is a time of transformation. This is a time of new beginnings. It is a time of resurrection in our church. Lots of us, as we've been thinking about this theme, we took a look at an article written by Rachel Johnson on the Huffington Post. And she wrote this really interesting little quote I wanted to share with you. And she says, what if the church isn't dead? But what if the church really is like Lazarus, who is asleep in the tomb, waiting to be woken up by that fresh reality made new by the power of God? Haven't we slept in the grief and loss of the past long enough? Isn't it time, O sleeper, to awake, as the hymn says, to that power of the mighty power that is surely present with us whenever we get together as the annual meeting? We all know it's there. The answer is in us. This year, this meeting, are you open? Open to gathering strength and scattering light. In May, I guess we're going to find out. And I hope you'll come ready to be open.